Green infrastructure maintenance tasks change throughout the year. When maintenance teams begin this important work, it is helpful to know what kinds of tasks to expect in each season. Spring offers the opportunity to get a head start on green infrastructure weed control. The plants are smaller in the spring and easier to pull. And in many areas, weeds are some of the first plants to turn green and begin actively growing in the spring. This makes them stand out from the native species that we prefer to have growing in green infrastructure. It also makes it easier to target these weeds with herbicide, with less risk of harming the native species that are still dormant, as most herbicides work best on plants that are green and actively growing. Once the good native species have sprouted and started growing in the spring, you may notice some gaps in the vegetation, where some plants didn't survive the winter. This is an especially important consideration for newer green infrastructure installations in their first few years. When you notice these gaps, supplemental planning may be needed to keep the area looking and functioning properly. Removing debris from green infrastructure will be a regular task throughout the year, but in early spring, after the winter snow melts, trash and other debris that has been buried by the snow may be more noticeable. It is a good time to remove anything that could spoil the appearance or clog up inlets and outlets and disrupt the flow of water. Spring may also be a good time to notice any ruts or gullies that may have formed. These may indicate that inlets aren't functioning properly, or that stone needs to be added to an area to slow or divert water. Summer maintenance tasks will include some of the same tasks that were done in the spring, such as debris removal and weed control. The weed control may require a different strategy in summer. In some areas, hand pulling or cutting may have to take the place of herbicide treatment, as the native species become green and more vulnerable to accidental spraying. As you plan summer weed removal, it is helpful to consider the life cycle of the weeds. Most plants spend the early part of the year developing leaves and stems, before eventually developing flowers. It is best to remove weeds before they produce flowers. Once these flowers start to develop, the plant is close to its seed-producing stage. It is important to cut or remove the plants before they have the opportunity to produce those seeds. Some plants may produce hundreds or even thousands of seeds, so if you wait too long, those seeds can spread and grow into new weeds for years to come. Green infrastructure must be maintained with safety and accessibility in mind. So later in the summer, when many plants are reaching their maximum height, they may need to be trimmed or removed if they cause visibility issues near roads, or if they block walkways or access to hydrants or other structures. If the area contains any new plantings, the summer heat can be challenging to the small plants, especially in drought conditions. Occasional watering may help these young plants survive their first summer. In autumn, leaves falling from nearby trees may end up in drains and curb cutouts, so keeping these areas clear is one of the main tasks for fall maintenance. The attractive flowers, grasses, and sedges of green infrastructure begin to turn brown and go into their dormant stage in the fall. Some of these remain attractive and provide seeds for birds to eat in the colder months, so the plants are often left as they are. However, some people may not prefer the appearance of the dried stems and leaves of these dormant plants, so maintenance teams might be asked to cut these down before winter. The roots survive underground though, and the plants can return the following year. Weed control also continues in the fall. As the native species begin their dormancy, rosettes of some weed species are still green and can be effectively treated with herbicide. The fall is a good time to evaluate how well the native plants are filling the area, and to look for places where additional plugs can be added to complete the native landscape. Though many people think of spring as the ideal time to plant these supplemental plugs, fall plug planting is also effective. Supplemental seeding can also be done in bare areas. With plants dormant or covered in snow, most weed control is put on hold for the winter, but there are other tasks to be done in the colder months. If there are trees in green infrastructure, winter is a good time to get some pruning work done. In snowy climates, plowed snow and ice can accumulate near curb cutouts and other kinds of drains. Larger accumulations may prevent the drains from functioning properly when temperatures rise and snow begins to melt, so these areas must be checked and cleared if necessary, to ensure that water is moving through them properly. Ideally, Green infrastructure near roads and walkways should include plants that can tolerate salt, but it may be necessary to monitor the impacts of water runoff from salted roads. The true impact may not be noticeable until spring, when the plants come out of dormancy, and you can observe how the plants have survived. Throughout the year, be sure to communicate with other departments who may be mowing, removing leaves, plowing, and salting near green infrastructure, making sure they are aware of the boundaries and how their work could impact green infrastructure. Any season can produce a heavy precipitation event, so throughout the year, maintenance teams should stay connected to weather forecasts, whether it's snowstorms in the winter or thunderstorms in the warmer months. Maintenance teams should be responsive to these events, checking to make sure that water is moving into and out of them as intended. With this weather awareness and an understanding of the seasonal tasks associated with green infrastructure, maintenance teams can anticipate and effectively respond to any challenge that arises throughout the year, helping to keep green infrastructure looking and performing at its best.